You found product market fit, but now the systems are cracking. The team needs you for everything. Growth feels like quicksand. The more you move, the deeper it pulls you in. This is the scaling paradox, where founders and operators come to get unstuck. I'm Blake Moseni, and I sit down with founders and operators that nearly burnt out and rebuilt their business to operate without them. If you're stuck in the middle, this is where we fix it.
If you buy a business and you're involved day to day, you've just bought a very stressful, expensive job. I want to have a business that will run without me. I'm taking my knowledge information so my team can do the things on a day-to-day basis, and I'm not the bottleneck. And so I think for a lot of people, that is the way you like to frame that. Now, there are some businesses where an on-site presence is so important. I think these service businesses, these technical service business, flooring, HVAC, electrical, anything like that, you need people on site that actually know how to do the things. And so we hired a very fantastic general manager for our flooring company with a lot of flooring experience. He's there day to day. My other business partner, she is in San Francisco. She is there on a day-to-day basis. My roles and responsibilities for the business don't require me to be there on a day-to-day basis. And that is part of the reason I took the role that I have in that business.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Scaling Paradox. Today we're going to be talking about the big leap that Chris Geddes took leaving tech to move into service-based businesses. Chris spent years inside both large and early stage tech companies, including time at Google, before making a leap into full-time entrepreneurship. Over the past few years, he's been operating across service businesses, real estate, and AI opportunities with a focus on bridging and bringing leverage into traditionally people-heavy businesses. Chris, it's so exciting to have you on.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I know we've had a lot of great conversations about what you're building and some of the things that you got going on, and it's necessary for the listeners to hear some of the cool things that you're doing. And I know so many people have been toying with different ideas on the work that they're doing, maybe jumping into a new space, especially with the advent of AI. But before we get into any of that, I'd like the listeners to get to know you a little bit more on a personal level. So you're in Montana. What is the best place to ski in Montana? And I don't know, maybe you're a skier, snowboarder, but interested in what your POV is.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, so I was lucky enough to grow up in Montana. I'm currently in Bozeman, Montana. This is where I spent most of my life. I'm biased. My favorite place to ski is at Bridger Bowl, which is the local ski hill about 15 minutes north of Bozeman. That's where I learned to ski. I know that mountain like the back of my hand. Super fun. But more people will probably come out to Montana. They go to Big Sky, which is the
Yeah, been
about
up there before.
45 minutes south. Yeah, a lot of people done that. Big Sky fun. It's, the big resort kind of feel, but I like, my Bridger Bowl. I like my slow lifts. I like being able to duck into the trees and have a good time. So
There you
that's where I
go.
grew up skiing, and it's where I love to go ski.
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, that's a good insight. I might have to check out Bridger Bowl next time I'm out there in the winter time. Are you? What would you rate your skill level when you're skiing? Are you like a double black diamond guy? Are you some greens and some blues? Or are you just backcountry? What does that look like?
I can ski just about anywhere. I
Okay,
feel pretty confident on the hill. But, as I've, aged, there's nothing wrong with a great just kind of groomer day, just cruising down the mountain.
100%, 100%.
Yeah, and a powder day, they're no friends. I disappear and ski where I want to ski and do that. But yeah, I mean, I was lucky. I mean, I started skiing when I was 4, so I, had that my entire career and or their entire life growing up, just being able to ski.
Awesome. Well, anybody that's listening, if you're out in Montana, you know the person to hit up and ask for recommendations. Chris, I know that's unsolicited, but he's a friendly enough
I would
guy. He's always willing to
love
help
to
out
have them. It'd be a fun time for sure.
for sure. So let's go ahead and dive in. It would be great to talk a little bit about your career and what has transpired. Obviously, you spent some time in tech. Maybe give a little bit of context on some of the roles that you had, your time at Google, and then we could start to dive into what drove you to start making that shift.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people, I had a pretty kind of normal start to my career. I went to college, I graduated college, I did some internships and stuff like that. I actually got to intern at the now defunct VMware, which was a server virtualization software company based out in the Bay Area. And I moved to the Bay Area in gosh, 2012 and started my tech career then. I actually got a job with a small kind of account-based marketing B2B company in 2012 on the heels of one of my internships up there. And I started in tech. I mean, that was a fun time to be in tech, to be honest. A lot of growth. The kind of financial crisis was kind of ending. There was a renewed excitement in a lot of these companies. A lot of, venture capital money was flowing back into the system. And I worked at various startups in the Bay Area right after college and did that. A lot of product and project management, kind of my background. I was a PM for several years. And after, like, I don't know, maybe it's a badge of honor, I had my first kind of failure tech layoff. Third of the
Mhm.
company said goodbye overnight at
Woo.
this when I was earlier in my career. I kind of did some contracting work and I ended up actually at Google and converted full time there. And I was at my Google time was, gosh, almost 7 years after doing that. A lot of project management, program management, big. I was in ads, big projects. I launched or with teams helped launch a couple billion-dollar products, which was very cool. And that was my kind of early adventure. I was working at the all-time dream company. I had
Mhm.
everything going right, and then I was frustrated. I left, and we could talk more about that. But yeah, I mean, my career was really in tech and doing kind of all the things they tell you to do right out of college, and I was pretty
Mhm.
lucky and successful with that path there.
It's so funny because I've talked to many people about that journey, like the stereotypical, like I would call that the millennials version of the white picket fence journey career wise.
100%. Yeah,
Like,
no, it's true.
and people get there and they're like, is this the pinnacle? Is this really the top of the mountaintop? And it sounds like you had that same itch.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I mean, it's so funny. It is like the millennial white picket fence. I did everything I was told, go to college, get a good job, go through this path. And I got pretty frustrated. I got pretty burnt out. I was unable to kind of see the path and the growth that I wanted to. And I was looking for something more. And so, to jump into it, I kind of did some side stuff and we can, disclaimer, do not quit your job without a plan if you don't have a good plan for that, but I kind of planned for that. And yeah, I left my tech career in the spring of 2024, and I have been doing full-time entrepreneurship in various different businesses since then. I'm really happy with that shift. It hasn't been easy. There's been hard times, there's ups and downs, but it's been really rewarding kind of leaving my kind of standard W-2 and looking to scale what I would call some of these kind of boring businesses that are online, businesses that were owned by boomers, whatever catchphrase that people say on social media these days. But it's been fun to be really involved in those businesses now.
That's very cool. You've spoken about some of your time, some of the frustrations, some of the experiences you've had at a multitude of different tech firms. And you're bringing forward a lot of those skill sets and capabilities to the boring businesses that haven't been exposed to technology and have just operated in a very traditional manner. What are some of the things you learned in terms of how to scale a business at some of the tech companies that you worked at during your career in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough that, I worked in startups. And so you're a person, a team, a company of, anywhere from 25 to 150 people is kind of where I had been. You wear lots of different hats, right? There's only so many people to do stuff. And so I took a lot of that learning and that kind of scrappiness and having, knowing that people in the team were going to do things that necessarily weren't in their job description, but just needed to get done.
Sure.
And I took a lot of that kind of mentality to my time at Google, which was a much larger organization, obviously. My immediate team within ads was double the size of my largest startup, to put it in perspective. And obviously where, very well defined roles and expectations for people in that sense. But you still have to be a little bit scrappy. And the team I was actually on was it was funny. It was kind of a startup at Google, right? It took it
Mm,
from, the team I was on when I joined, which is so wild. The team had just done like $1 billion a year as a team and the products we had done.
mm,
And we're on this path to 5 billion, 10 billion. I think by the time I left, I don't know, whatever it was, tens of billions of dollars of revenue just from this one individual team. And that at Google, was a startup in that sense. And so you have to take some of that mentality and like how you work with teams, how you interact with people, how are all these teams coming together? My role in program management or project management or product management, whatever it was honestly orchestrating the chaos of all these various teams across, engineering, sales, marketing, support in order to deliver these products. And I think the biggest thing I've learned is like you just have to be able to understand what motivates people, what motivates teams, how these teams work in order to be successful. And the things I was doing with teams of 300 people, I'm doing in my businesses today where we have 2 employees. It's the same
Mhm.
concepts, different scales, obviously, but the same concept. How are you getting people to be successful around that? So it's
What are some of
funny.
those concepts? Sorry to jump in, but like what are some of
No,
those
no.
concepts that you're instantiating into your business?
I mean, a lot of the biggest stuff that I know Google, there's so many papers and studies and highlight this, how do you build a highly effective team? A lot of the basis is the psychological safety. Does the team feel comfortable to raise concerns? Are you celebrating wins? Are you able to have those kind of debates and discussions to be effective? And it's weird. It's hard, obviously, with a team of 10, but it's even harder with a team of two. Like how can my general manager, my flooring business be like, hey, this sucks when he's talking to the boss, right? How can we build that sort of thing? And so that kind of team dynamic and the communication and feeling comfortable to say what's going well, but even feeling more comfortable to say what's not going well, those are the things we need to sort out really quickly. And I think anyone looking to build a team, if your team can't tell you what's wrong in a quickly time, you just have a bunch of yes people around you and it will seem fine, but eventually it's going to blow up. And the big issue that could have been identified up front didn't work out. And my favorite phrase to say with our teams is like, bad news early is good news. I live
Hmm.
by that. I want to know as soon as possible something's not right because I have time to fix it. If I find out the day before we have a huge issue of our big launch, I don't have much to do about that. Versus if I find out 6 months, 9 months, 12 months in advance, whatever it is, I can actually solve something around it. So that's a lot of the mantra I try to bring with our teams. It's like speak up early and often. It's not one person's fault if something goes wrong. It's a collective team. Or how do we put you in a position where, you got to this? I've watched 20-something-year-old engineers bring down billion-dollar products. No one
Hmm.
gets mad at that person. They get mad at what in the system of the process allowed that person to make a mistake like that, right? It's not on them. It's the bigger thing. So yeah, again, I'm rambling a little bit, but I think that kind of mantra of building solid team and understanding and the communication and safety within that is so key. And people call that culture, whatever you want it to be, because that is the real way that you can move quickly, break things, the things that need to be break. People don't feel bad about breaking stuff, and you can actually push forward and be successful.
It's funny. What I want to call out is there are a lot of things you could have brought up. You could have said, hey, most business owners aren't focusing on ads. Most business owners aren't focusing on other forms of strategy that could be executed against. And those are all true. But it's so interesting that the first thing that you said was people, because to your point, all of those type of strategic actions are the downflow, or what's a better way to say it, or the secondary to having a good strong core team. And if you don't have a good strong core team and you're instituting all of these execution paths or infrastructure, your ability to actually transcend to the level of growth you're trying to get to is directly impacted. So I think it's such a great call out and reinforcement, and it really reinforces what they do talk about when they speak of Google, which is that focus on the team and the infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, you can have the best plan in the world if you don't have the people that can do it. And I know we're talking, we're going to talk about AI and all these things, but even that, if you cannot develop some sort of concept of this culture and what you want to drive towards a bigger vision, all these things, which I think are derived from that culture, it's irrelevant what you can do with people or not people or whatever else, the process you have best process in the world. If you don't have the right team to put in place, it does not matter because you'll have other deficiencies, other issues where you'll never be able to achieve that because you're going to be constantly kicking yourself in the foot or constantly, taking 2 steps forward, 8 steps back because you can't do the things you need to do. So yeah, I mean, I'm a huge believer in that, and having the right team in place and that right kind of culture and the right kind of psychological safety for that team, you'll be much more successful than if you just kind of cobble it together and think of it as an afterthought or worry about is my ad strategy or is this strategy or something like this together. It's kind of irrelevant if you don't have the right team in place.
It's all about the people. It's all about the people. So you had an inflection point during your time at Google. Like you are on this, you're climbing this mountaintop of success. Like everything is going right. Your business is growing. You're getting double digit gains or even 100%, 200% gains on the overall growth of that business year over year. What was the point where you said this doesn't feel right? And what triggers you to say, I need to go do something different?
Yeah, I think I started to realize that it's crazy. Like I was on, I don't think I was able to achieve kind of the career goals I wanted to achieve at Google. I don't want to go do the deals, but the culture kind of shift a lot in that. The business had grown a ton. I think as I started to feel that, and I start getting into the same type of meetings, and I was finding like, man, I'm not really solving new sets of problems like I want to be solving anymore. I was just ready for a change. And, this is not like a knock on Google. I think obviously my needs and desires in my career shifted that maybe the company, like couldn't handle that moment. But I was kind of just feeling a little bit stagnant, right? And that's one thing to do for a quarter, but as you start to realize that for a year or maybe going into your second year of like, wow, like maybe I'm not making that same kind of growth or not seeing the same type of opportunity, yet I feel like I'm doing all the things that should kind of drive to that. I was just ready for a change. And so I think for me, that kind of started to happen over time. And I was like, okay, I need to look into other stuff. And for me, I started looking at real estate investing. I started looking at some of the business acquisition space, all these kind of things. And I wanted to honestly kind of take a bet on myself of can I go out and, I've run all these great teams. I've built released these great products for this large organization. Can I take those learnings and kind of bet on myself and do that in my own way? And that was kind of the impetus there. And I'll tell a lot of people I worked essentially two jobs for well over a year. I
Yeah.
put in a lot of time. I did my day job at Google, and then I have my night job doing real estate, focusing on other things. Can I run up some other businesses? Can I do this stuff? And that's how I knew I was like, wow, I'm really enjoying this. I'm willing to work this hard at two companies. Yes, I worked at Google. I'm not like working like a service job, and I'm not working in other things that a lot of people say. I acknowledge that, but I still was working 100-hour weeks. It was just different, different kind of 100 hours than a lot of people thinking were. And that kind of shift was needed for me to realize, oh, I want to invest in myself, and I really want to explore what entrepreneurship looks like me, and I don't need to be tied to a company anymore.
It's really interesting because I think many people have these type of dreams and aspirations to say, "Hey, I want to leave this job and I want to go bet on myself." But it's a scary thing. I think a lot of people question, and a lot of people don't end up doing it. A lot of people talk about it, don't end up doing it. And so I think what holds a lot of people back is the ego. It's the ego saying, "Hey, this is the safety net. This is what I know and how to operate to provide for my life and all the other risks associated to it." How did you kill that voice to say, "I need to go bet on myself"? Because tell me if I'm off, but I'm gonna guess or bet that there was some sort of conflict as you were trying to make this final decision on, do I stay? I'm at the pinnacle of millennial success at this company, or do I jump and go chase these other opportunities?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to acknowledge that I felt it. I mean, for me, working at Google had become part of my identity. That was like
Yeah.
weird to kind of
You're
walk
like,
away
I'm a
from.
Googler. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like, it made it really easy at every dinner party. What do you do? I work at Google. Like, there was no like, huh? What? Like, it was,
yeah.
it fed this ego, which, in hindsight, like, was kind of weird now that I think about it. But, in that moment, I obviously felt that a ton. Here's kind of how I rationalized with this is one, if I really enjoy essentially working two jobs and I find the same amount of joy in this new thing and I'm happy to, commit nights and weekends and other time for that, that's a good indicator that this is maybe a good shift. Secondly, obviously make sure I saved, I planned my finances, I did things so I knew I had a runway that if it all went to hell, I wouldn't, my family wouldn't be destitute or something like that.
Sure.
But also, if you think about it, like what's the worst thing that happens? It fails. You probably can live with your parents for a few months if you have to. Do you love doing that? No. Do you have to do things like no, but like the worst case is I probably will still have a place to live. It may fail. And I go get a job, which I had already been doing for 10, 12 years of my career. And I just go back to the default what I've been doing. The worst case scenario is like get another job. Yes, maybe it's not with the same company or whatever it is, but for anybody, like you can get a job, you can pay your bills, you can likely do the things that you need to do. It maybe isn't as prestigious as it once was, but the failure state is you just do the thing you were doing for the previous 10 years. And so once I really kind of got used to that and realized, well, if it all goes to hell, I just go get another job. I was like, okay, I can actually really bet on myself. And, because I like to say now from one of my mentors is, what if the opposite is true? What if it's
Mm.
perfect? What if everything goes well? What if it blows up? What if you create this next big thing? Well, I'd rather like to lean on that as opposed to, well, what if it all goes to hell? Well, the default answer is I just get another job and reevaluate what I want to do next.
I love the way that you frame that from a risk, just a risk threshold, because I think to your point, it is human nature to think if I fail at this, I die. Like that is just like the derivative response. And a lot of people don't put words to that, but if you actually get down to where your fears are, the fears are usually like this happens, catastrophic, I fail, and said thing like I just won't make it past that point. But if you actually get down to the dollars and cents of it, and whether someone has parents in their life or doesn't have parents in their life, there's probably a relationship that you can lean on at some point to help you get through the hard time. And I think it's liberating when you take that frame because it's a reminder that hey, there's unlimited upside on this other side of the fence. And I also want to preface this, anybody that's listening, that doesn't mean like if you don't want to do this and you don't get passion from chasing the hard thing, like that's okay. And if you like the corporate and the work environment, like continue to do that. That's all fine. This is not a knock one way or another, but also realize that there is uncapped upside when you bet on yourself, and the risk is far lower than anybody else could, than most people speak to or recognize.
Yeah, I mean, I just have once I kind of internalized that and realized, well, what's my worst case scenario? I just get another job. Like I believe I'm a reasonably intelligent person. I believe I'm a reasonably employable person, and I just go get another job. That really just mitigated some of that risk. And you can step level of risk too. Again, like do the two job thing, right? Work the nights and weekends. If you're enjoying it then and you're seeing, don't quit your job to go do something that has no traction. Like I knew that the things I was doing was successful. I had been making money. I was paying bills. I was doing stuff. And so that validation made me much more comfortable. And, I did that from the safety of having my existing job. I just worked a lot harder in order to validate that over time. And then I was able to make that shift. So that's, I think, a great place to start. And yeah, if it all doesn't work out, you can go back to that. And frankly, and also too, like, there are plenty of people I know that are successful in their corporate careers. They
Mm-hmm.
love their job. They love what they're
Yep,
doing. That's amazing. Continue to do that. I still
100%.
talk to plenty of my friends at Google that are enjoying the thing they're doing. They think I'm a little bit crazy, but that's okay. Like worst case, I can always come back and you can be successful that way. So yeah, I think that's a good way to frame when thinking about it. Plan, obviously, but just realize the worst case scenario is probably not as bad as you think.
I love that. I love that. So you leave tech and you decide service businesses. Obviously, you got some real estate sprinkled in there, but why service businesses? Maybe give a little bit of context for the audience on how you landed there.
Yeah, so I mean, I started a real estate, essentially service company. I don't want to get too much into that, but that was like my test case. It was a relatively low overhead business and had some upside, and was really my like trial of like, am I a reasonable business, entrepreneur, business owner? That's what I want to test. And that business ended up, doing pretty well. I have a team in place now. I don't really involved in that, but that allowed me to really focus on these service-based businesses. And I just like that because I mean, yes, I would argue I get caught up in kind of the marketing you see online and stuff like this of like the silver tsunami, all of these baby boomers
Yeah,
retiring
yeah.
and we have these businesses, right? Like I acknowledge that obviously drove that to me. But when I started digging into it and I, was looking at some of these businesses, I realized that a lot of these businesses were very successful and they were not even doing what I'd argue the basics of what a business in 2025 or 2026 should be doing. They're not really online. They don't really have a good marketing or sales plan. They don't have some of these efficiencies in the back office software or even software in place that make the business just be more efficient and running and allows you to drive better yields on your margin and just drive more efficiency so you can do more sales. And taking my kind of tech background and what I had learned and some of kind of the dabbling of the business I had started, I was like, I think I can really create a successful business, drive a lot of value, provide, job opportunities for other people, drive enterprise value, do all of the things you want to do in a business. And, this business would likely just disappear because there's no one in line that wants to take it on, right? They're having a hard time selling it because these businesses that the owner, it's a great business but they haven't put those things in place. They don't have that person that can take it over. A lot of people want these businesses that are just you buy it and then you don't have to touch it because everything's in place. And so I knew I kind of wanted, I mean, I call them like a fix and flip business, right? You come in, they are a lot of work, but the upside you can see for doing that can be really exciting. And so I felt in these service businesses that there was a lot of opportunity. I mean, your standard examples, anything from like a car wash to laundromats, all the way to your, HVAC, roofing, flooring, anything that requires still today someone to come and provide that service. Robots are coming, I guess, but they're not here right now. I think we got a
Yeah,
few
yeah.
decades before all, physical labor is done. But even then, you can still run a business. The things still have to be installed. And so that's what excited me about that. And, jump into it. I ended up acquiring a commercial flooring business based out of San Francisco, 45-year-old business, but had nothing in place. And
That's
and we
wild. That's wild.
there was nothing online about it. I flew to San Francisco to get to the tower computer to download the QuickBooks because everything was stored. I'm not even joking. There was nothing online about it. Nothing. The customer list was literally in a Google or an Excel file on the computer. That was it. And frankly, it was pulled from QuickBooks. That was a customer. I mean, it was there was nothing online in it. But that business had been around for 45 years, had long-term accounts with big names like San Francisco State University, San Francisco Airport. It's a great business. It just, nothing was online about it. In the moment, if the seller had died the next day, the business would have died. All the information was stored with him, right? And
Mm.
that's why his business had less value than something like that. And that's the sad thing about this. There's so many businesses in the US where these owners are a wealth of knowledge, but they just either haven't had the transition or the succession plan for them, and their business is hard for them to sell. And that is I think it reduces their ability to capitalize on the hard work they had over 40 years. And so there's a nice balance of me being able to come in to provide some, value to the business they've created, but also enough upside for me to make sense for the sheer amount of work I'm going to put in to turn the business into, I'd argue, in what 2026 business should be like.
Absolutely. I appreciate the notion that you want to help that business owner get the best value possible, but also help catapult their business into the next chapter of where things are at in our society. And I'm interested to hear how you've gone about sourcing deals. Like, obviously, you have a pretty wide swath of opportunities. And is there a particular type of industry that you are interested in? Or is it just, hey, the multiples are good and I could at least I could increase the EBITDA on here by a couple points, and there's some juicy leverage there.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say I had this like grand plan where I knew, right now in my portfolio I have, a bunch of real estate, I own a car wash, and I own this flooring business. And I wish I could say, hey, 2 years ago I had this like great plan to find these great car washes or find these great flooring businesses. No, I had no real plan on that. Businesses came in really by a little bit by luck and through relationships, right? And I think that's still a place a lot of people want to be. You find good opportunities through relationships, and through my time in networking and meeting people and really talking about that I wanted to acquire businesses like this, opportunities came my way. Now, a lot of these businesses were true fix and flip businesses, and so they needed it was the right seller and the right buyer to make all this work. And so, no, I'm relatively early in these journeys. My car wash I've owned for just over a year. The flooring business I'm 6 months in. They're still early in this phase, and so I tell people I reserve the right to tell you in 12 months that I hate these businesses, that I've made a terrible idea. Right? I just don't know. But with the basics of the fundamentals of the business, what these kind of multiples are, what revenue they're doing, and what potential upside I saw, I was very excited to invest in them and commit the time that I'm committing to them based on that. There are plenty of businesses I've looked at that I've said no to because they don't meet that criteria. I wish, like, and this is not like, oh, I got lucky with the first one. I looked at many businesses for a lot of time and looked at a lot of financials, and once you look at enough financials of a business, you start to realize what's real or fake. And so that I don't have really great process, but I think the networking, getting to know these business brokers, getting to know people in this industry, getting to know people that, who are either, even talking, if you're interested in business, you'd be surprised how many people, if you go into their laundromat, you go into their, HVAC business and you say, hey, if you're a younger person, for example, I'm really interested in this business. You've been doing it for a while. And informational interview. Can I talk to you about the business? More often than not, people I know, they may end up selling to you because they're one of the few people of a certain, like, say, millennial or whatever age that is interested in these businesses. And so there's a lot of opportunity if you show that interest and just kind of knock on doors and meet with people. They may say, well, my buddy's selling, you should look at that business. And maybe I'll partner with you and take you along the ride. I was lucky, like my car wash, our day-to-day operator, he owned car washes for 25 years.
Wow.
He said, I was going to buy this car wash, but my wife told me I'm retired, but it's 10 minutes from my house and I wanted to help. And you seemed like a guy that was interested in car washes and not just trying to make a buck. And so he's our day-to-day guy. And like I've learned a lot from him. I would have made a ton of mistakes on that car wash had not been, my fantastic operator, Ben. I mean, Ben, every problem we have, he's solved 100 times and he's
Mm,
educating me on. And so, I got lucky. I truly got lucky with him because he's in the middle of helping us with a $50,000 upgrade at our car wash. And he goes, yeah, I've done 8 of these. This is exactly
mm.
how it's supposed to go. And so there is, don't underestimate that these boomers, they really do want to see someone take over their business and help it grow. And if you show a little bit of impetus, there's a good chance that they will help you in certain ways to achieve those goals as well.
I want to tie in a couple threads based off what we've already chatted about. So, first, going back to relationships, as you said, these opportunities have come your way because you've put what you wanted into the world. You said, hey, I'm changing from Chris the Googler to Chris the entrepreneur, and I'm going to start telling everybody about what I'm doing and what I'm trying to build. And then deal flow has started to come your way. Something you said earlier was this idea of relationships, building on relationships, investing in people that you're working with. And that has pulled through and shown up in all the opportunities that have shown up. I've also noticed, especially as you're talking about the car wash rep that you have, you're just talking about building good culture, right? Building good culture and having good engagements with people. And he's working with you, and you're getting all of this value from that simply because you weren't trying to, you're obviously trying to make a buck, but you led from a human standpoint, not from just a standpoint of, hey, I need someone to do this job. I'm going to find a person to do this job. And I think that's a pretty unique insight when it comes into this notion of buying businesses, especially when you talk or think about this is essentially someone's baby, right? They've been working with this thing for as long as maybe longer than some of their kids have been alive. And so to come in and to pass it off, it's a very personal engagement that you seem very apt and you have a great set of skills to do that. You mentioned as we were chatting, you've gone through so many books that you know what's real versus fake. I think the listeners would really appreciate to hear your perspective when you're going through a P&L or you're going through just the financials of any organization. What are the things you look for? What jumps out to you and triggers you to say, hey, this is a very solid business to go buy?
Yeah, I mean, so I appreciate that. I do think, a lot of these, especially people are looking at small businesses, it is very relationship based. You are going to rely on so many people, so many vendors, so many people that have been around the business for a long time you're trying to impart, like, how are you supposed to take 20 years of knowledge in this space? When you have, for me, like, I haven't even been in my working career for well over 20 years. And so it's super important. And it's a good thing to highlight that you are going to lean on a lot of your partners, your vendors, your people to help you. So treat them right, because if you do, they will help you get on binds that you inevitably are going to be in a business. In terms of the business evaluation, I honestly think a part of it is reps, right? At the time, this was before kind of the advent of I really do think your tooling today, your Claudes, your Geminis, your ChatGPTs, whatever it is, can really help you understand books better than even I did. But I found for me is that as I started to look, at the same type of business, right? So I'll use an example. We thought for a while that we might do self-storage. And so I underwrote, I think, well over 100 self-storage facilities in a certain time frame. Got to look at their books, and you start to look at when you start seeing the same thing over and over, it allows you to start asking questions around what does actually this expense line item look like. One property that we went under contract for and started doing due diligence, I was looking at, it's a relatively small facility, and there's like a $70,000 fuel charge for a self-storage facility, and I was like, what is this? And I asked questions, and I was like, the owner's like, oh, that's just the family fuel card. I was like, what do you mean the family fuel card? She goes, oh, yeah, everybody in my family has a fuel card and it just goes into this account. We just take care of it. I was like, that is a huge liability for your accountant. I can't believe you admitted that. And I can't believe you admitted that to me. But you start to see things like that doesn't quite make sense. Or you start looking at, even all these people saying, well, you have a certain net operating income, and they're assuming a 30% expense ratio. And I've started to learn that for, certain businesses, the best run super optimized, businesses in this space run at a 50% expense ratio. So how are you getting 35%? It just doesn't seem like it's real numbers. And so a combination of looking at a lot of them, because it's the reps, you're better at evaluating your 100th, set of financials than you are your first. Working with people and understanding working with other people who are already in that industry who know, like, hey, what does well-run business look like? What type of numbers should I expect? Getting those kind of benchmarks and idea to help you evaluate that. And, a lot of it came from relationships and conversations. I was lucky enough, for the self-storage example, I had a couple friends that own self-storage facilities. And I was like, what do your books look like? They go, this. Anything else is nonsense. And so
Mm,
that's what we ended up doing for a lot of these businesses. You go out and talk to other people who run the business and ask them questions, right? Like, I want to be a smart person, but I'm not going to be the smartest person in every scenario. And so, for a lot of our listeners, yes, you want to look at the books, but like, you won't really start to understand these businesses and what they're capable of until you understand and have had conversations with many, many of the people that are in that space. And
mm,
again, you will be surprised how many business owners, if you come and sincerely say, I'm interested in this space, you seem successful, can I buy you coffee? Will you tell me about it? They love talking about their businesses. These are their babies. They really
mm.
are. And there is especially in this country, there is a certain sentiment of people wanting to pass on to the next generation. And man, take advantage of it if you can, because there are plenty of people that would happily give you their time so that they can talk about the business that they have been running successfully through the best times and the hard times for the last 20 or 30 years.
What's your opening pitch to get that door open? Because I'm sure, obviously, you've been fortunate enough to have relationships that have led to brokered some opportunities. But I'm assuming you've done some cold calling, some cold outreach outside of just the broker side. What's
Yeah.
your pitch to get people on the phone and to engage with you?
I mean, I'm pretty direct and I just honest, like, hey, my name is Chris. I'm really interested in this industry, X, Y, and Z, or, business type. You look like a market leader in this space. I'm looking at potentially buying one of your competitors, or even like potentially buying in another metro. Like, if you don't want to, like, I'm buying in Montana, but you're based in Colorado, whatever it is, call the people and just say, would you be willing to chat with me about this? I'm evaluating it and I'm just, trying to see what you like, what people like about the market. And I kind of take with this abundance, like, there's plenty of money for everybody. You'll be successful, but you look like the market leader, and I really want to emulate you. I want to see the things you're doing. And yeah, some people are go, I'm not giving you my secrets. Click. Cool. I call the next person. Like, I've had that, right? People are like, I'm not giving you my secrets. And I'm like, okay, that guy doesn't like working with that. But you'd be surprised by how many other people go, yeah, let's talk about it. I'll open the book, because this is the thing that I think a lot of people get caught up on early on. Like, no one's going to give me away their secrets. Like, they're never going to share it. I'm in the point now where I've seen so many people come in wanting the secrets. I give it all away because 99% of the people don't do anything with it.
No one's gonna execute.
No one's going to execute. So they're like, sure. And because think about it this way, worst case, well, they maybe build a competitor out of you, but they've literally taught you everything you know, and they should be able to get around you. Or best case, they have someone that they may want to partner with, or they see a value to grow, or you bring a new mindset, whatever it is. And so the good business owners I find, yeah, you get hung up on, they tell you to F off, but that's everything in life. You'll find the good ones who are happy to do it, and you might just catch someone at the right time, and before you know it, you're negotiating buying their business.
I like that a lot. I think that's the perfect frame. And your sentiment on abundance. At the end of the day, any industry you want to dive into, we live in a massive country and there's opportunity everywhere. Before we jump into some of the AI side of the conversation, I am really interested in your perspective on remote management. So as we were talking about, you're in Montana right now. Your property management firm, your flooring firm, is based out of San Francisco. How do you feel about the remote management of these businesses? And I think you said your car wash is in Arizona, right? So how does that feel? And what are your recommendations to first-time buyers or people that are trying to get into the space on remote versus in person?
Yes, two big aspects of that, and it's where they a little bit contradict themselves. I think if you only buy businesses that are within like an hour or two drive of you, you use that as a crutch, and you will constantly be the person solving all the problems in your business.
Hmm.
I often have to take approach when I buy real estate, a business, and I cannot get there in an hour, it forces me to be better about all the people and processes I need to have in place to run the business effectively.
Mm,
Because I imagine what happens if I'm in the hospital for a month and I'm in a coma and no one can touch with me? Well, I try to treat my businesses as much like that, where I obviously you're reliant on a lot of things with me, but the day-to-day operations of things like that, I can't be the guy that has to run and, twist every bolt or fix everything or solve every customer problem. So I really take that mentality on that I need to think of it a way of like, what happens if I'm literally unreachable and what do I need to put in place? And so that's something that I think people should, yes, it's nice to buy something close to you, but really look at, are you ready to think of it like a business and how you want to set it up so it has to run without you? If you buy a business and you're involved day to day, you've just bought a very stressful, expensive job. Fundamentally, you have.
I
As
like that.
opposed to, I want to have a business that will run without me. I'm taking my knowledge information so my team can do the things on a day-to-day basis and I'm not the bottleneck. And so I think for a lot of people, that is the way you like to frame that. Now, there are some businesses where an on-site presence is so important. I think these service businesses, these technical service business, flooring, HVAC, electrical, anything like that, you need people on site that actually know how to do the things. And so we hired a fantastic general manager for our flooring company with a lot of flooring experience. He's there day to day. My other business partner, she is in San Francisco. She is there on a day-to-day basis. My roles and responsibilities for the business don't require me to be there on a day-to-day basis, and that is part of the reason I took the role that I have in that business. Now, I'm there a lot. I mean, I'm there at least once a month for the last 6 months since acquisition. I will probably be there next week. I'm already looking at booking my flights. I'm there a lot because I need to be there for the business and that's the phase of it. But you just have to pick and choose that. I would not buy a business remotely that I had no background in or none of my partners had background in. Again, the
Mm,
flooring business, it's a multi-generational business. My business partner is the daughter of the gentleman we bought it from. She's been in
mm.
flooring. She knows that business. She has that. So I lean on her for a lot of the specifics as I bring in some more sales, marketing, process, bigger things that are industry agnostic but are beneficial towards it. So that's not a great answer because it's kind of like it depends, but it really does. It depends on the business, what you're looking to do. You can buy a nail salon and have a GM in place and you can live across the country. It's a nail salon, right? Like that is the requirements and the customer support you need to provide and the, upside versus downside risk is generally smaller than I'm installing $150,000 worth of flooring this week, which we did, and there's a warranty and all these things and like real risk to the business that could put it out of business versus, man, we had the wrong order of nail polish and our customers got unhappy, right? You see like the varying levels there. And so I think that just depends on what business you're looking at and what level of risk you want to take.
I appreciate the heuristic that you've put together on decisioning. And to your point, any complex decision, the response should be it depends because it varies from situation to situation. And I think the key in all of this is really pushing yourself. And for you, that's not being boots on the ground in said location for these businesses. But I think in general, if you're taking this type of role and operating at the portfolio level like you are, creating a force function for yourself not to get sucked into the day to day. And I think it's very easy to get sucked into the day to day because that's where the dopamine is, right? You're in there, you're solving problems, you're helping fix the fires that are coming up. But at the end of the day, the leverage is not found in the dopamine. The leverage is found in that portfolio level view and building the systems to help scale up that organization.
Yeah, I mean, again, otherwise it's just a very expensive and stressful job, which honestly, I'd rather just be a W-2 employee and not have to deal with any of the overhead issues if I'm just going to have an expensive job. Because, like, in the nicest way possible, like, yeah, I'll take a salary from some of these businesses, but like, it's not like I'm making the same amount of salary I was making when I was at Google. It's a different, I'm getting paid, but the real value is the upside I have from the real, the enterprise value, whatever you want to call it, that I can create from it. And I kind of love that I got involved in a flooring business because I've learned a lot about flooring, but I still don't really know how it gets installed, nor
Mm-hmm.
do I need to, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a wonderful team that is in charge of that, and I'm trying to make sure the business can grow and we can provide a great, experience to our customers and deliver quality product and all those kind of things. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't need to be the guy on my knees that installs it. I'd love to, I'm supportive of our guys. We make sure we pay them well, but it's just like it's not my zone of excellence, zone of brilliance. And so I really do my best not to spend your time there. And so as anyone is looking to be a potential owner, really make sure that when you buy a business that you can apply your zone of brilliance in the place that needs to be and then you put people in place that their zone of brilliance is that, and then let them do
Mm.
their job.
Appreciate the notion of the zone of excellence and really focusing on where and how you want to play to scale up the portfolio and all the businesses that you're working in. So we spent some time talking about service industry and why you wanted to play there. We haven't spent much time on AI, and that's the buzzword that everyone's loving to talk about these days. Let's really unpack and understand where you think AI changes the equation for the businesses that you're working in, and where do you think the specific bottlenecks are that it could help remove?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of this, and not just because I, worked in tech or I was at Google. I think really anyone, especially if you're trying to be a small business owner, there's a lot of opportunity if you frame things kind of as AI first. I mean, I think that's one of the buzzwords right now, but I'll put in this perspective. We will probably do north of $2.5 million in sales in this flooring business this year. We did 1.6 last year. And that's not all
Okay.
driven by AI. It's just, us being heavily involved in the business and trying to do that. But I look at some of our large competitors, these are companies that do 50, 70, $100 million a year in flooring, very impressive
Wow.
businesses.
Wow.
And that's just in our local market, right? I think about that in the sense of they have a lot of people doing back office tasks, manual tasks, repeatable tasks that
Sure.
they've had probably on staff for decades, and they make, I don't know, 50 to $150,000 a year, depending on what they do, right? I know today with AI, what you can do, that I can handle a majority of those tasks and maybe spend a few $1,000s a year in, AI credits and maybe some other additional help to get that set up. And so there is a real opportunity as you take some of these businesses and not rethinking of like who is going to do this task, but like how can we achieve it via agenda workflows, whatever it is. What outcomes do I need to derive from this? What workflows do I have? There's a real opportunity that we can be super competitive in these smaller businesses that, don't necessarily have the capital to scale up that way. You can be much scrappier and even leaner than it is today to
Mm.
achieve some of those things. And I think today, any sort of back office software, bookkeeping, accounts receivable, even some sort of just like ordering inventory, those kind of things, you can get a lot of that work done with Agenta workflows and don't really need a human to help you with that. And then also in a lot of your sales and marketing initial cold outreach, advertising, what you would pay an agency or people to manage or have a lot of, outbound sales reps or whatever it is. Now it's not all perfect, but you can achieve a lot of that today just using AI to support that. And if you think in any small business, that probably, saves you $150,000 a year in salary, just
Hmm.
salary, and less onboarding, less training, all those kind of things. Where, I know my business today couldn't afford that to bring that on where we need to be. So there's a lot of things you can do today with AI that makes these small businesses really scrappy and exciting and can, I think, quickly jump from, you could really see double, triple revenue just with some of those things if everything else doesn't break in the business when you grow that fast. And that excites me with AI today. And I mean, 2027 will even have more opportunities there, but I mean, it's not a hypothesis. It's not a thought. It's like these things are available right now, and a lot of businesses in the U.S., if they capitalize on it in the near term, will be very successful. It is pretty wild, and I'm excited about it to see that growth. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is driven by, just trying to be more efficient with this. And that report, I think, also is interesting because when they probably did that report, I wouldn't be surprised if people are feeling that because I feel like the tooling and everything has changed dramatically in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
What's capable, what I'm doing today, really, like honestly, something I set up today wasn't really easily possible to do until about 2 weeks ago when one of the providers I work with made a change that I've been begging for, and now they have it, and I can actually, yield this another level of productivity. And so, and I really don't want to come across as this like I don't know, like AI truth or whatever it is. Like you don't need to like immediately do something right now. The world is not ending. Your job is not going to get taken away. But people should be aware of it. You should consider how it can work in your day to day or what it is because we're very much at the bleeding edge of adoption for this. But I really feel in at least 12 months, you're going to see more and more businesses just having people using it more daily in their day to day and guiding them. And I think the people that are more aware about AI and really think about it like what task can it help me with right now and thinking about that, you'll be super successful. But yeah, I mean, I do think small businesses, if they have the right minded person who can like help drive that, or the owners are really into it, there's a lot of efficiency gains that they can get, which they used to be saving up to hire some new salaried role for this. And now I think they could get 3 or 4 people's worth of salary work by implementing some stuff within the, using AI within the business.
Yeah, people aren't even scratching the surface with Claude Code or any of these other tools at this point in time. Like, let's
No, it's not even.
it's funny because I was just talking about this with a colleague of mine, and what I was sharing with him was I think the future of businesses is less SaaS. Like you have all these different SaaSes that you use, subscriptions that you pay for, or maybe even let me say it differently. I think it's less the standard work document they used to give team members or people in your organization to say, hey, this is how you execute this task, to the future of a micro SaaS that's created that enables that standard task or procedure to be executed and just provides the output to whether that's an agent orchestrator or another individual in the business. Like that's where things are going. And I'm interested to hear what you think is important for the listeners to take away on the AI front and how you even started to dip your toe in the water. Obviously, you're tech forward, you have a tech mindset, but what got you over the hump to say, I need to have this in my business?
Yeah, I kind of twofold. To give advice to the listeners is start using AI and trying to do the things that you've always dreamed about, but you feel like you couldn't do. So, like a good example,
Mm,
I have always wanted to build an app. And I knew, the process a few years ago, what that would take, and the people, and all these things, and learning this. And so I worked with AI, and I used Cloud Code, and I built an app, a live working demo app with like I said, talk to me like a 5 year old, guide me through every single step, show me the things I need to do. And I have a working demo of an app that I have been thinking about on my phone right now that I'm testing
mm.
kind of for fun on the side. That would have taken me months of serious focus and work, even a year ago, like months. That's the old way to do this. And now I have it on my phone. I'm testing it, and I'm excited to, I have a couple of people that want to try it out next week. And so for a lot of the users, like if something you felt was impossible, just go and ask if it can be done and figure out how it would do and make a plan and test it out and see if you can deploy it because you, with mostly free services, you can have this idea you've had come to life. And I think that people being curious and wanting just to, something that they take the mindset of like, well, I'm not this, so I could never do it. Say, well, what if the opposite was true? What if I could do this with this tool? And what if I go try to do it? Right? You'd be surprised, I think, what most people can achieve with that. And so I encourage everyone, just have fun and like pick a fun project. And then for the other people, with that curiosity, I think that will start driving to understand, oh, I was able to do this thing that I thought was really hard or would take me a long time, and it took way less time than I thought. Well, what about these mundane things in my business or my day to day that I know how to do over and over because I've done them over and over? How can I use AI for that? And how can I, and that, like, I think that's the best way for people to implement in the business. Pick the things that you know, like the back of your hand, that you could do in your sleep, and just have AI do it for you and see what you think about it. Because I think
Hmm.
more often than not, you'll go, wow, I just freed up 2 hours of my day. I just freed up 10 hours of my week. I just like this, like, I'll do like the TPS report that I've always done, right? Whatever it is, like because everybody in their life has something, right? Like that they just is a repetitive task. Well, see if AI can help you out with that. That is like, I think, the beautiful thing, because like you'd be surprised with relatively limited context, the AI can do it pretty well. And then when you put your knowledge against it, does it very well, and then you realize, wow, I never have to think about this again. That I think will drive the curiosity and creativity that will implement more AI into businesses and people's day-to-day lives, because they'll realize, wow, this is like a true force multiplier. And I do think this is kind of scratching the surface. I think AI will be able to do way more, but as like the entry level for getting people excited to it, the learner's permit of AI, whatever descriptor you want to do for that. I think that's a really cool place for people to start. I mean, it's pick something boring that you hate doing, and then just see if AI can do it for you. And it might not be perfect, right? There's all these things, but like I think that will show the potential, and it's a cool place. And before you know it, you will feel like an AI rock star, and you're going to be ahead of literally 99% of people in this world for a very long time.
If you could go back to your younger self and give yourself any piece of advice, let's say that's 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years, whatever the time frame is, what's the advice that you would give to yourself and why?
I think the biggest piece of advice, and we touched on a little bit, but I really wish I had embraced that earlier, is it's okay to take risks, be confident in yourself, because you realize that the worst case state is not nearly as bad as you think it is going to be. I wish I had started this journey, maybe not a decade, but at least 5, 6 years earlier than I did. And because for you, it takes time to learn the new thing and to go through this stuff and to be proficient. Every day you do that sooner is the sooner you get to that goal. I give the example. If someone told you, hey, you're going to fail 100 times before you do the thing you ever always wanted to do and achieve all this success, well, you would want to fail as fast as possible to achieve that. So the thing of start early, start often, feel comfortable take those risks, and then embrace the fact that your worst case scenario is probably not nearly as bad as you think it is. I think that will, for me, I'm happy where I am now, but I think I would have accelerated a lot of stuff if I had embraced that earlier in my life.
That notion of your the bucket of gold, and this is proverbial gold, people. I'm not saying it's always a cash fulfillment. Maybe it's other forms of fulfillment. Is at the end of 100 failures makes you strive for that outcome. Like that is so salient, and I appreciate you calling that out. I'm definitely I'm gonna write a little sticky. Put that on my computer. It's a really good reminder. And then the other question I like to ask is, what are you most excited about? Obviously, there's great things happening with the business, and you have a little one on the way. What are you most excited about in this next chapter of life?
I mean, I have a lot of very positive things coming up. Obviously, my firstborn will be arriving at the end of the summer. But I think for me, I'm in this season where I have regained this kind of confidence in what I'm doing in business and life. I'm feeling that, the efforts and the things I've done and the failures I've experienced over the last 2 years are starting to pay off in a big way. And it's just kind of the next, just like at the tip of what I think I'm going to be able to achieve. And I'm just excited to, again, power through this year as fast as possible because I see a lot of upside, and continue what I'm doing. And so it's fun for me right now. I feel like I was kind of in that lonely chapter of entrepreneurship. If people follow other people, it was hard. It was tough. People didn't really understand what I was doing. They were like, man, you left Google to do what? Was a lot of questions I've had from people. And not that I'm trying to prove anyone right, but I'm proving myself that those efforts are paying off, and I'm nearing the ability to kind of harvest some of the fruits of that labor. And so for me, I'm just excited to keep doing and keep being consistent and not getting shiny object syndrome. I've got a really, I think, clear path of what needs to happen, and it'll be fun to reflect at the end of this year, what 2026, played out for me, knowing what I did in 24 and 25 until this point. So just a lot of excitement for upcoming, and I think what I try to impart with people is your first few months, first few years of doing this is probably not going to be the easiest time of your life. Know it up front, embrace it, because once you get to that next phase, you'll really start to appreciate that, knowing all the work you've done. And I feel like in that point of, wow, okay, like it's working. So let's just keep doing it.
Congratulations, man. I There's a quote that came to mind as you were talking through the journey that you've lived through over the last couple of years, and it was, "For each day on the seeds you sow, not the harvest you reap." And I think that's such a good reflection on the failure comment that you've made, as well as everything that you've lived through up until this point. It's like it's coming to this mountaintop, and you've seen the growth. You're seeing the growth across the businesses, and you made the jump, man. And most people don't do it. So kudos to you, Chris. I always have so much fun when we chat. I knew we had to have this podcast together, so I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. And before we jump, and if the listeners want to reach out, any place that they could find you, LinkedIn, any places that they could reach out to you on.
Yeah, so LinkedIn, you'll see this smiling face with this mustache. You can't miss me there. It's just funny. It's easy for me to stick out that way. Also, you can get me on Instagram, and I'll give you that. But it's Christopher_Geddes on Instagram. Send me a DM. If I don't get back to you within 24 hours, send me another DM. It probably got buried somewhere, but that's generally the easiest way for people to get in touch with me. And I, love chatting with other entrepreneurs, people considering, leaving their W-2 to get into business or entrepreneurship. I've had plenty of those conversations. So feel free to reach out if this, conversation helps you kind of down that path or maybe brings up more questions. Reach out. I'm happy to chat. I'm excited where I am on this journey, but I remember vividly how I felt 2 years ago. And I'm sure a lot of people feel that same way.
Absolutely, man. Well, appreciate you. Congrats on this next chapter, and we'll keep in touch. That's it for this episode of The Scaling Paradox. If this helped cut through the chaos, please send it to another founder or operator that's stuck in it too. If you haven't subscribed yet, let's fix that. New episodes of The Scaling Paradox drop every other Thursday. There's no filler in this podcast, just the real work of scaling past yourself.